It's down to 4 in the AFL. The reigning Premier Melbourne and Fremantle have been crashed out this weekend. So the penultimate week in 2022 season looks like this. Friday night, Geelong hosts Brisbane at the MCG. Saturday, it's the Swans and the Pies at the SCG. And Bianca, Collingwood continues to ride the magic carpet, just one win away from a fairy tale grand final appearance. The Pies were at their electrifying best last night, a 20-point win over the Dockers. They say speed kills. Speed killed the Dockers last night.
Oh, especially in that first quarter. And Kel, you've come dressed in your black and white, which is great to see, being a Pies fan that you are. But it was incredible. And I think De Goey and Elliott in the forward line, they're really just working with each other and helping each other out. The Dacos boys were in form. Crisp, I think, 187 consecutive games for Crisp. And it's all just coming together and everyone's loving them. It's great to see there's a lot of non-Magpies fans out there actually wanting the Magpies to do well. They were incredible. And I really loved how they went about it.
I think a huge part of that is the style, the way they play. You talked about how quick they were, and that's the ball movement in particular, how quickly they can transition from one end of the ground to the other. Craig McRae talks all the time to his team about, you're boring me, go and play some exciting footy. I mean, when he's telling his team that, everyone's got a smile on their face.
That's what it comes down to.
They're such a great team to watch at the moment, and the ride that they're on from second last to now be in the final four, that they are the feel-good story of the year. And I've been lucky enough to call some big games at the MCG, Cal. It was a special night to be there last night, and I wasn't there in 2017 when Richmond played the Giants, and it was a similar atmosphere last night where it's so rare for Aussie rules that you have 90,000 in the house and 85,000 of them pulling for one team. I mean, so often, even when we have big-time Carlton-Collingwood games or Richmond-Collingwood or Essendon-Carlton, whatever it is, you've got a pretty good split, whether it's 60-40 or 50-50, but it was overwhelming, the noise last night, and David Mundy mentioned in the aftermath that he felt like the Dockers were overawed. It looked that way, and I think the final margin was 20 points. It should have been much wider. It was a comprehensive Collingwood victory.
What an Iron Man David Mundy has been. His 19th season of AFL. He farewelled the AFL world at the MCG last night. These were special scenes. He kicked a late goal and 37 years of age, 376 games, 19 seasons, flying back and forth every second week. He'd have to be one of the most underrated players of the last 2 decades.
He's just ageless, and the travel aspect is the big one here. I mean, 300 is such a barrier for players based from WA teams. I think we've only ever seen Matthew Pavlich, David Mundy and Shannon Hearn from the 2 clubs combined. 376. I mean, that's going to take some beating,
isn't it?
For any player in the competition to travel like that every second week. So, what an absolute warrior, David Mundy, and he'll be well remembered as the game's record holder at Fremantle.
And the brilliant final series in both the NRL and the AFL continued. Friday night was an absolute ripper, wasn't it, between the Brisbane Lions and the Demons, and the reigning Premier. Well, they won their first 10. And then lost 8 of their final 14 games. 6 of those 8 defeats, they led by 22 points or more. So these fade-outs were definitely alarming. And it was the Lions, against all the odds, fighting back from 28 points down. They had no ruckman. Their star forward was missing. They've been thrashed by the D's twice. And they just wanted it more. They were hungrier in the end, weren't they?
Chris Fagan, you could tell he'd really done his homework, and that it was about making sure that the Lions could stick with Melbourne. Even though they got a lead, it was making sure that they could stick with them right to the point, once we got over half-time, and then they could run away with it. And they just had to stick tight with them for that, first half.
Love that vision of Darcy Wilmer playing his second game. He's won 2 finals. Life doesn't get any better.
Amazing. I think he's just the 6th guy in the last 40 years to debut in a finals series. Obviously, Marlon Pickett did it famously on grand final day, but your first 2 finals, and you could see what it meant to him. I mean, the way that Brisbane have done it in particular, so many people counted them out at the end of the home and away season that, their form seemingly had tailed at the wrong time of the year. They hang on to beat Richmond, and so many people this week were saying, that's their special effort. They're done now. Brisbane, they're heavy underdogs coming to the G where they've never won under Chris Fagan against the D's who have had it over them recently. And yet they pull off another special effort, undermanned without Joe Danaher. And in a strange way, Kel, they're going to be at sort of full strength, or as best that they've looked in this final series, in the 3rd game rather than the first game. So they've got Answorth back from suspension, Rayner back, who both played the other night. Danaher will return. McInerney comes back. So they're on a real Cinderella run, this Brisbane Lions team, and deserving of their place on preliminary final night.